Claire walked through the silent moon palace, with slow steps and a calm face, although the place felt old, cold, and filled with lost memories. The air was thin and carried a faint glow from cracked crystals in the walls. Each crystal looked like it once held great magic but now only gave a weak light that shaped long, tall shadows across the empty floor. She moved with care as she looked around, trying to understand the strange signal that had called her from faraway space. The guards who had come with her were already afraid. They had been trained for danger, but this place felt wrong to them. The halls seemed to breathe in a slow way, and the walls had marks of old battles. Each sound echoed like a cry from the past. Claire did not blame them for their fear, but she also knew she could not show the same fear if she wanted them to hold their ground. Her boots pressed softly against the broken tiles as she looked at each doorway. In her mind, she tried to imagine how the palace once looked when life filled the halls. She felt that someone watched her from far above. The feeling was not hostile, only curious, like an unseen presence wanted to know who she was. Claire touched one of the tall pillars as she passed. Its surface held gentle carvings of long, graceful symbols that she could not read. But she sensed they spoke of stories from an older time. She felt a soft heat in the stone, like a distant memory still lived inside it. She whispered a quiet thought in her mind, hoping the place would tell her more. The guards behind her moved with fast, nervous steps. One of them called her name but stopped halfway when he felt the strange air tighten around his throat. Claire turned a little and saw fear grow in their eyes. She lifted her hand, telling them to stay where they were. They looked at her with confusion, but trusted her calm presence enough to obey. A faint sound rose from a distant chamber like wings brushing against a metal floor. The guards gripped their weapons and breathed in sharp gasps. Claire held still, her breath slow, her mind steady. She listened to the rhythm of the sound. It repeated with calm patience, not wild, not angry, almost like a creature stretching after long sleep. A beam of soft blue light fell from above, as if the palace wanted to guide her. She walked toward it. The guards tried to follow, but the air pushed them back, as if the palace refused their presence. Claire felt no force against her. She walked through the beam and into a wide open hall, with tall, broken columns, rising like the ribs of a giant creature. In the center of the hall stood an old throne shaped from silver stone. Its edges were smooth, like water had touched them for ages. On the throne sat the alien queen Lyra. She had long, pale hair that flowed like quiet smoke. Her skin held a soft glow, and her eyes were deep and calm, like endless night skies. She wore armor shaped from light metal that bent with her movements. Beside her rested a small dragon named Flint. The creature had scales that shined like warm embers. His wings folded neatly against his sides. His eyes watched Claire with sharp interest, but no anger. He let out a soft breath, and a small curl of heat rose from his nose. Claire bowed her head slightly. She did not speak because she felt the queen already understood her arrival. Lyra studied her in silence. Her gaze felt heavy, but not cruel. She lifted her hand slowly, and Flint stood alert, ready but calm. The queen rose from the throne. Her steps were almost soundless as she moved across the cracked floor. She stood near Claire and looked at her with quiet focus. Claire felt the air shift around them. It was not magic she could name, but it was strong and old. Lyra lifted her eyes to the high ceiling where broken glass panels let in thin rays of moonlight. She then placed her hand lightly over her heart and gave a soft nod. Claire understood it as a greeting. She placed her own hand over her heart and returned the nod. The palace around them seemed to change with their movement. Old lights flickered on, as if they recognized the queen and wanted to show her memories. Images appeared on the walls, glowing like living paintings. Claire watched them with wide eyes as scenes showed the palace full of life. Tall elf, like people, walked with gentle grace. Flint looked younger in some images, his wings brighter, his fire stronger. But the images soon grew dark. Strange beasts made of metal burned through the palace. Soldiers fell. Walls broke. The queen fought with bright light in her hands, while Flint blasted wide waves of fire. Claire felt sadness rise in her chest as she watched the fall of a world she had never known. Lyra looked at Claire again. Her voice entered the air like soft wind, although Claire heard no clear words. It was more like a feeling placed gently in her mind, telling her that the enemy was close again. The same enemy that broke the palace long ago. Claire stood still. She felt her heart push against her ribs, but she did not step back. She knew now why the strange signal had reached her. The palace needed someone who could stand firm, without fear. Someone who could face the unknown. She did not know if she could save this place, but she would not run. The guards behind her cried out as the air grew colder. Claire heard their fear, but they were far behind now. They could not enter this hall. Lyra watched Claire carefully, wondering if this human truly had the strength needed for what was coming. Flint stepped closer to Claire. He lowered his head and breathed a warm breath near her arm, as if testing her scent and her courage. Claire did not move. She reached out and placed her hand lightly near his neck. Flint let out a low, soft rumble like distant thunder. Lyra lifted her hand once more. A soft glow formed in her palm. It was a small piece of old magic, still alive inside her. She placed it in Claire's hand. The light felt warm and steady. It did not burn. It just stayed alive like a calm flame waiting to be used. Claire closed her fingers around it and felt a strong sense of purpose fill her mind. She looked at the Queen and then at the sleeping halls around them. She knew she had a role to play. In the coming days, she would not flee like the guards. She would stand firm even when fear tried to hold her down. Lyra walked back to the throne and Flint followed her. Claire stayed in the center of the hall, still holding the soft glow. The palace felt less silent now. It felt awake, aware, ready for what was coming. Claire took a slow breath and let the warm light guide her thoughts. She felt that this was only the beginning of something greater, something that would test her strength and her will. But she was ready to face it. She had come this far, and she would not turn back now. She would stand beside the Queen and the dragon, and she would help them defend the last heart of their lost world. Claire stood quietly as the halls of the Moon Palace slowly revealed their secrets. The soft blue light from the crystal pillars guided her steps. She could hear Flint breathing softly behind her, and the gentle hum of the palace filled the empty spaces. Each step she took seemed to awaken long sleeping memories that the walls carried deep inside. Lyra followed her gaze with quiet attention. The Queen moved with grace that seemed almost unreal for someone who had seen her world crumble. Her long, pale hair flowed like smoke as she walked beside Claire. She did not speak, but Claire felt the weight of her presence as a kind of silent conversation. Words were not needed, yet the understanding grew between them. The palace showed them rooms filled with relics of an ancient time. Shelves held books written in unknown symbols. Tables had small devices that glowed faintly, as if powered by an unseen energy. Claire touched one of the glowing devices. It hummed softly in her hand, but did not react with hostility. She felt it contained knowledge of a world long gone, and yet still alive in this place. Flint moved closer to Claire and flicked his tail across the floor. Sparks flew, but the sound was muted by the heavy silence around them. The small dragon sniffed the air carefully and then looked at the Queen as if reporting his findings. Lyra nodded slightly, and the two moved forward together. Claire reached a large open chamber where the moonlight streamed through broken glass panels. Dust floated in the air, catching the light and turning it into silver threads. She saw murals on the walls showing battles of old. Lyra stopped before one mural that depicted her standing tall with Flint by her side. The colors were faded, but the motion in the painting felt alive. Claire traced the lines with her eyes, seeing the grace and power of the Queen in the past. Lyra turned to Claire and extended her hand. She placed a small crystal in Claire's palm. It glowed with soft energy. Claire felt warmth flow through her fingers into her chest. She understood this crystal was a key not for doors or locks, but for courage and strength. It was a gift and a test in the same motion. Claire felt her heart grow steady as she held the crystal. She looked around and saw that the palace was more than broken stone and cold halls. It was alive with the history of its people. Every corner told a story of triumph or loss. She could sense the energy of those who had stood and those who had fallen. This knowledge was heavy, but Claire did not falter. She was learning to carry it. Lyra began to speak. Her voice was soft but clear inside Claire's mind. She told the story of the enemy that had invaded the palace long ago. They were metal creatures that moved with strange intelligence. They did not sleep, and they did not rest. They destroyed everything in their path. The palace defenders had tried to fight, but their numbers were few and the enemy strong. Claire listened without fear. She understood the pain in the story, but also the courage. Even in defeat, Lyra and Flint had stood together. Claire nodded to herself. She felt a connection to the queen and the dragon. She understood now that her role was not to save the palace alone, but to stand with them. They needed someone with steady heart and clear mind. The guards who had fled could not offer this. Claire could. She felt the crystal pulse gently in her hand and knew it would guide her through the challenges to come. The chamber began to shift as they walked further inside. Walls opened to show hidden passages. Each passage seemed to lead deeper into the heart of the palace. Claire felt a mixture of awe and caution. Every step was a choice. Every step mattered. She could sense the old magic of the palace, watching her, measuring her, understanding her resolve. Flint flew a short distance above Claire, wings moving silently. The dragon's eyes never left her. Claire smiled slightly. She felt the dragon's trust and the queen's faith in her. She knew that this bond was rare and precious. It gave her strength she had never known she could hold. They entered a wide hall filled with statues of long-gone warriors. Their faces were stern, their poses proud. Claire felt the weight of their eyes, as if the past soldiers were silently judging her worth. She stood tall and let the crystal shine softly in her palm. The light touched the statues, and they seemed to shimmer for a moment, as if acknowledging her presence. Lyra stopped in front of a statue that looked like a young soldier. She placed her hand over her chest and then over the statue. Claire watched quietly. She understood that the queen was connecting with the memory of her fallen friend. The gesture was private, but powerful. It showed Claire that even someone with great strength could carry sadness with quiet dignity. Claire turned her attention back to the path ahead. The palace was vast and full of hidden dangers. She knew the enemy could return at any moment, but she did not feel fear. She felt purpose. She felt ready to act when needed. Her role was not just to stand, but to move with care and make choices that could save them all. Lyra finally spoke aloud in a soft voice. She asked Claire if she was ready to face what was coming. Claire nodded and placed the crystal near her heart. She felt its warmth and let it steady her. Flint rumbled softly, circling above them. The dragon's presence reminded Claire that they were not alone. Together, they would face whatever danger approached. The queen led Claire through the winding halls. They passed more murals, more relics, more signs of the past. Each step carried them closer to the heart of the palace. Claire's confidence grew with each step. She moved, not just with caution, but with purpose, understanding that every decision mattered. As they reached the next chamber, Claire could feel the air change. It was thicker, heavier, with old magic and old fear. She held the crystal tightly and moved forward without hesitation. Flint landed beside her, wings folding neatly. Lyra followed, her eyes sharp and watchful. Claire knew that the coming days would test her in ways she could not imagine. She would need to be strong, patient, and brave. She would need to trust in herself, in Lyra, and in Flint. But she also knew that she could do it. She had already faced the silence and the fear of the palace. She had already stood firm when the guards had fled. The palace seemed to breathe around them, alive with stories and power. Claire felt the weight of history and the responsibility of the present. She knew that her journey was only beginning. The palace seemed to breathe, and boarding the city. And she knew that her journey was only beginning. The crystal in her hand pulsed with quiet strength, guiding her through the shadows of the halls. She felt ready to face the challenges ahead. to learn from the Queen, and to stand beside the dragon in the coming trials. Claire moved with steady steps through the Moon Palace. The crystal light from the pillars guided her path. Flint flew above her, silent and careful. Lyra followed closely, her eyes scanning the halls for any sign of danger. The palace was quiet, but heavy with old power. Every step felt like walking through the memories of those who had lived and fought here. The halls were long and lined with broken columns and shattered glass. Dust floated in the air and settled softly on the floor. Claire could hear the soft hum of the palace as if it were alive and aware of her presence. She held the crystal tightly and let its warmth flow through her, keeping her calm and focused. Suddenly, a distant sound echoed through the halls. Metal claws scraping against stone. The guards who had remained near the entrance trembled and ran back. Claire did not move. She felt the presence of the enemy in the air. It was the same force that had destroyed the palace once before. She stood firm and took a deep breath. Lyra stopped and looked at Claire. Her eyes were serious but calm. She nodded slowly, acknowledging that Claire understood what was coming. Flint circled above, wings folding and unfolding. His small fire breathed warm light over them, casting shadows that danced across the walls. The enemy emerged from the dark corners. They were strange machines, moving with intelligence and purpose. Their metal bodies glinted in the soft light. They advanced slowly, pushing through broken doors and cracks in the walls. Claire felt a chill, but she did not step back. She held the crystal closer and felt courage flow into her. Lyra raised her hands, and soft blue light spread around them. She whispered words that filled the air with old magic. The light wrapped around them like a protective shield. Flint leapt forward, fire blasting in wide arcs, forcing the first wave of machines back. Claire stayed by the Queen's side, ready to act. She moved swiftly when needed, guiding them through the halls and avoiding falling debris. The enemy pushed harder. More machines appeared from the shadows, their movements coordinated and fast. Claire felt the weight of responsibility heavy on her shoulders, but she did not falter. She kept moving with purpose, placing herself in positions where she could protect Lyra and Flint. The crystal in her hand glowed brighter, sensing her determination. Flint roared and fire erupted from his mouth, hitting the metal creatures with precision. Sparks flew, and the walls shook. Lyra focused her energy into beams of light, cutting through the enemy with calm strength. Claire watched their movements and adjusted her steps, learning to anticipate the enemy and guide the Queen and the dragon through the most dangerous paths. The palace walls began to crumble around them. Dust filled the air, and pieces of stone fell from the ceiling. Claire felt a small panic rise, but she held it back. She focused on the crystal and let its warmth steady her. She moved quickly to shield a weak spot in the Queen's defense, holding a fallen beam with her strength so Lyra could continue casting magic. The machines advanced, but Claire felt their rhythm and predicted their attacks. She guided Flint to hit their weak points and called to the Queen silently through gestures. Lyra responded without words, trusting Claire's instincts and following her lead. The bond between human, dragon, and Queen grew stronger with each passing moment. Hours seemed to pass in the battle. The halls were filled with fire, light, and metal grinding against stone. Claire did not stop. She moved with purpose, her mind clear, her heart steady. Every choice mattered. Every step could save or cost a life. She felt the palace watching her, acknowledging her strength and her courage. Finally, they reached a narrow passage that led to a central chamber. The enemy followed, relentless. Claire stood firm at the entrance, ready to defend Lyra and Flint as they moved forward. She felt the crystal pulse and the warmth of the magic around her. She knew she could face this challenge and keep them safe. The central chamber opened into a wide space where the moonlight fell through a large broken window. The enemy machines advanced slowly, but Claire did not move back. Flint blasted fire in wide arcs, and Lyra bent light into sharp beams. Claire guided them with careful steps, placing herself between danger and her allies. The battle continued with intensity. Claire moved through the chaos with calm focus. She lifted fallen debris, blocked attacks, and created paths for Lyra and Flint to strike. The palace seemed to respond to her courage, the crystal in her hand glowing brighter with each action. She realized she was not just standing firm, but shaping the outcome of the battle. After a long and difficult fight, the enemy began to fall back. Their movements slowed, their strength fading against the coordinated efforts of Claire, Lyra, and Flint. The halls were damaged but still standing. The central chamber was filled with light from the crystal pillars and the glow of magic and fire. Claire breathed heavily but did not sit. She stayed alert, ready for any final attacks. Lyra approached her and placed a hand gently on her shoulder. Flint circled above them and let out a low, soft rumble. The queen's eyes were filled with respect and understanding. Claire had proven her strength and courage. She had stood firm when the guards fled in fear. She had protected the queen and the dragon and helped turn the tide of the battle. The halls grew quiet once more. Dust settled, and the soft blue light from the pillars filled the spaces with calm. Claire felt the weight of what had happened, but also the quiet satisfaction of purpose fulfilled. She had faced the enemy and remained strong. She had earned the trust of the queen and the bond of the dragon. Claire looked around the central chamber and saw the palace alive with quiet energy. She felt the crystal pulse once more and understood that the battle was not over. There would be more challenges ahead. But for now she had stood firm. She had faced fear and danger and had not faltered. She had proven herself as a protector, a guide, and a steady presence in the heart of the Moon Palace. Claire moved cautiously through the palace halls. The soft blue light from the pillars guided her path. Flint flew above, wings silent, eyes sharp and alert. Lyra followed closely, her pale hair floating like smoke with each step. The palace was damaged from the previous battle, but its energy was still alive and strong. Claire could feel it in the air and in the crystal she held tightly in her hand. They entered a long corridor lined with broken statues. Dust covered the floor, and small pieces of debris fell from the cracked ceiling. Claire stepped carefully, aware that one wrong move could send them into danger. Flint circled above, ready to defend them if needed. Lyra moved gracefully, her eyes scanning the halls and her hands glowing with soft blue light. The sound of metal scraping against stone reached them again. Claire did not flinch. She had learned to sense the rhythm of the enemy. The machines were coming, moving with intelligence and speed. She held the crystal tightly and felt warmth flow through her. It gave her courage and clarity, keeping her mind steady even as the sound grew closer. Lyra spoke softly to Claire, guiding her movements. The queen's magic flowed around them like a protective shield. Flint leapt into action, fire blasting in wide arcs to slow the enemy's advance. Claire moved with careful precision, guiding the dragon and queen through the halls. She lifted fallen beams and blocked attacks, using her strength to protect them both. The enemy machines pressed harder. Their metal claws scratched the stone and their bodies moved with relentless determination. Claire's heart stayed steady. She felt the crystal pulse and focused on the path ahead. Every choice she made mattered. Every step could save or cost a life. She guided Flint to strike at weak points and helped Lyra cast precise beams of magic to take down the most dangerous machines. The palace walls shook as the battle continued. Dust and small debris filled the air. Claire did not stop. She moved with purpose, placing herself between danger and her allies. Flint's fire lit the halls, and Lyra's magic cut through the enemy. Claire learned to anticipate the attacks and respond quickly, guiding the queen and dragon through the most dangerous areas. They reached a large chamber filled with broken pillars and shattered crystal. The enemy had cornered them, but Claire did not falter. She stood firm and guided Lyra and Flint with clear movements. Flint unleashed a wide blast of fire, forcing the enemy back. Lyra focused her energy into a strong beam of light, cutting through the machines with precision. Claire moved debris and blocked attacks, keeping them safe and creating paths for their counterattack. The battle raged on for hours. Claire felt her strength and courage growing with each passing moment. She moved through the chaos with calm focus, her mind clear and her heart steady. The crystal in her hand glowed brighter, responding to her determination. She realized that she was not just standing firm, but shaping the outcome of the battle. She had become a guide and protector, trusted by both the queen and the dragon. The enemy machines began to falter. Their movements slowed, their strength fading against the coordinated efforts of Claire, Lyra, and Flint. The palace halls were damaged but still standing. Claire stayed alert, ready for any final attacks. She guided the dragon and queen through the remaining threats, using her strength and the power of the crystal to protect them. Finally, the enemy retreated into the shadows. The halls grew quiet once more. Dust settled, and the soft blue light from the pillars filled the space with calm. Claire breathed heavily, but remained standing. She had faced fear and danger and had not faltered. She had protected the queen and dragon and helped turn the tide of the battle. Lyra approached Claire and placed a hand on her shoulder. Flint circled above and let out a low, soft rumble. The queen's eyes were filled with respect and understanding. Claire had proven her strength and courage. She had stood firm when others fled. She had become a vital part of the defense of the Moon Palace. Claire looked around the chamber. The palace was damaged but alive. She felt the crystal pulse in her hand and understood that more challenges would come. But she also knew that she could face them. She had learned to trust herself and her allies. She had learned to stand firm, even in the face of overwhelming danger. Together with Lyra and Flint, she would continue to defend the palace and protect the last heart of their world. As they moved forward, Claire felt a sense of calm determination. She knew the coming days would test her in ways she could not yet imagine. But she was ready. She would stand firm and protect those who could not defend themselves. She would guide Lyra and Flint through the challenges ahead. She would become a guardian of the palace and a symbol of courage for those who had fallen. The battle had strengthened her resolve, and she knew that together they could face whatever darkness lay ahead. Claire moved steadily through the central halls of the Moon Palace. The blue light from the crystal pillars cast long, soft shadows. Flint circled above, wings silent and careful. Lyra walked beside Claire, her eyes scanning every corner for danger. The palace had survived previous battles, but was scarred and fragile. Dust and rubble lay scattered, yet its energy remained strong and alive. Claire felt it in the air and in the crystal she held tightly, pulsing gently in her hand. The sound of metal scraping against stone grew louder. The enemy machines had returned, more numerous than before. Claire did not flinch. She had learned the rhythm of their movements and sensed their intentions. She held the crystal close, letting its warmth fill her with courage. She felt steady and ready, prepared to protect the queen and the dragon. Lyra raised her hands, and soft blue magic spread around them like a shield. Flint flew forward, fire blasting in wide arcs to slow the enemy advance. Claire moved swiftly and carefully, guiding the dragon and the queen through the palace. She lifted debris and blocked attacks with steady strength, placing herself between danger and her allies. Every movement was precise and purposeful. The machines advanced with relentless determination. Their metal claws scraped, and their bodies moved with intelligence. Claire focused on their weak points, guiding Flint to strike and helping Lyra cast beams of light. She moved with calm determination, protecting the queen and dragon, and creating paths for them to counterattack. Her actions shaped the outcome of the battle. The palace walls shook as the fight continued. Dust filled the air and pieces of stone fell from the ceiling. Claire did not falter. She moved with purpose, guiding Lyra and Flint through the chaos. The crystal in her hand glowed brighter with her determination. She felt her courage grow with each step. She was not only standing firm, but leading them through danger with calm and steady mind. They reached a large central chamber where the enemy had gathered its full strength. The machines pressed forward with precision and speed. Claire stood firm at the entrance, ready to defend her allies. Flint unleashed a wide blast of fire, hitting many machines at once. Lyra focused her magic, creating sharp beams that cut through the enemy. Claire moved carefully, using her strength to shield them and create paths for counterattack. Hours passed in intense battle. Claire did not rest. She moved through the chaos with calm focus, her mind clear and her heart steady. Every choice mattered. Every step could save or cost a life. She guided Flint to strike weak points and helped Lyra target the strongest machines. The crystal in her hand pulsed in response to her courage, filling her with strength and clarity. The machines began to falter. Their movements slowed, and their strength waned against the coordinated efforts of Claire, Lyra, and Flint. The halls were damaged, but still standing. Claire remained alert, ready for any sudden attack. She guided the queen and dragon, using her strength and the crystal to protect them. She had become the steady heart of the battle, trusted by both allies and the palace itself. They moved toward the heart of the palace, where the great energy core pulsed softly. The enemy had targeted this core, seeking its power. Claire took careful steps, holding the crystal close and letting its warmth guide her. And Lyra followed with cautious determination. Claire led them with steady hands, making choices that would protect the core and defeat the enemy. The machines pressed hard, but Claire did not hesitate. She guided Flint and Lyra with precise movements. Fire and magic lit the halls, casting shadows that danced across the walls. Claire moved debris and blocked attacks, keeping them safe and creating openings for their strikes. The crystal pulsed brighter, feeding her courage and clarity. She felt the power of the palace alive around her, recognizing her strength. As they reached the core, the enemy made a final push. Claire stood firm, shielding the queen and dragon. Flint unleashed a wide burst of fire, striking many machines at once. Lyra focused all her magic into a concentrated beam, cutting through the strongest enemies. Claire moved carefully, lifting debris and blocking attacks, ensuring their safety. The crystal in her hand glowed with steady light, guiding them through the chaos. The enemy machines fell back, their strength broken. The halls grew quiet and calm. Dust settled, and the soft blue light from the pillars filled the space. Claire breathed heavily, but remained standing. She had faced overwhelming danger and had not faltered. She had protected the queen and dragon and had helped secure the palace core. She had become the guiding force in the battle, the steady heart that held them together. Lyra approached Claire and placed a hand gently on her shoulder. Flint circled above and let out a low, soft rumble. The queen's eyes were filled with respect and understanding. Claire had proven her strength and courage. She had stood firm when others fled and had become a vital part of the defense of the Moon Palace. She had earned the trust and bond of the queen and dragon, showing that her courage and determination were unshakable. Claire looked around the central chamber. The palace was damaged but alive. She felt the pulse of the crystal in her hand and knew that more challenges might come. But she also understood that she could face them. She had learned to trust herself and her allies, to stand firm even in the face of overwhelming danger. Together with Lyra and Flint, she would continue to defend the palace and protect the last heart of their world. The battle was over for now, but Claire knew that vigilance was still needed. The palace held many secrets and dangers that had yet to reveal themselves. She would stay by the queen and dragon, guiding them with steady hands and clear mind. She had proven her courage, her strength, and her resolve. The moonlight reflected off the broken crystals and cast a glow that seemed to honor her determination. Claire felt ready to face the future and all that it would bring, knowing that she had become a protector of the palace and a beacon of courage for those who had fallen. She would continue to stand firm, guiding Lyra and Flint, and ensuring that the palace remained a place of hope and power for the future.